What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to your main event for this week's Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. I am your host, as always, Tony Mango, and joining me, as always, are the usual suspects here, Robert DeFelice.
Hello.
And Callum Wiggins.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. As always, reminders that you guys should drop in your comments below and tell us what you think of what we're going to be talking about here. So if you're on the audio-only platforms like iTunes and such, go over to the YouTube channel, ring that little bell for notifications, hit the like button on the video, subscribe if you haven't done that already, and start chiming in on your opinions, because what we're going to talk about today is our review of essentially, I guess, the full breakdown of the 2019 WWE Draft. It's been over a week long to try to get this done, and we still don't have 100% solid everybody is covered. So, half of this situation seemed to be sorting itself out earlier today. Some of it last night, some of it on Raw, some of it on SmackDown, some of it just randomly on Sunday morning. It's all over the place here, but it seems like they're pretty much done. And what we're going to break down here is the Raw and the SmackDown men's singles divisions, the tag team divisions, the women's divisions, the free agents, and just kind of our projections of what's going to happen in the future, what feuds we're interested in seeing, which brands are the ones that are in better shapes, the mistakes that they've made, the great decisions, pretty much everything that we can kind of keep in mind going along with that. So, first question I have for you guys. What do you think about how they did this draft?
Fucking awful.
Yeah, I agree.
Fucking boring. Go ahead, Cal.
Oh, just to say that I don't think WCW at their peak of terribleness would have created a draft as bad as the one that WWE just threw out.
No, it would have been so far bad in the opposite direction, because it would have been over presented and dramatized. But what the fuck was this? Bland Stephanie McMahon, who is not a character at the moment, just the chief brand officer, just reading names off of cards, half of which were given to the audience on their website.
Oh, that's a good thing to address, because WWE did make this mistake. They put out these draft pools, which they've never done this before, but they decided to break it up in half. Now, in typical WWE fashion, they didn't follow their own rules, because they had drafted, for instance, Heavy Machinery was not a part of the first draft pick, and they ended up being a part of the first draft pick. So, typical, can't trust even what they're promoting as being like, here's what's happening, cards always subject to change. But somebody made the mistake, whether it was on the website side of things, or sending it to the website people, somebody made a mistake of not putting it in alphabetical order. Instead, they put it in the exact same order that they were going through. So it started off with Becky Lynch, and then it moved on all the way through, and it got to like the 10th one or so, and everybody started going, uh-oh, this is following the exact same pattern. And they eventually switched it up just a little bit, but it was like, they might have even done that on the spot, just to kind of be like, crap, we just made this mistake. The next night, on the Monday Night Raw side of things, they somewhat followed that, but since they had changed things up a little bit, then that ended up mixing things up a little bit too, but that's a big oversight. And if we're supposed to believe this idea that somebody had shown Vince McMahon the NFL draft, and that he was going to try to structure it based off of that, pretty sure that the NFL draft does not work this way. It does not have random celebrities and random people that are on that network just chiming in with little cute promos about how they would love to have Andre the Giant as a part of their brand.
Yeah,
or all these other people that have passed away or haven't wrestled in 30 years. And then cut to Stephanie McMahon just saying, here's 5 names. Over and over again. This was very weird.
What made it even more annoying, and I'm skipping ahead to last night, was they did this whole thing of, NBC and Fox want these guys, and it's NBC and Fox, and they're going at it. And then Pritchard gets made the executive director of SmackDown, And very simply, very logically, they go, and Bruce Pritchard has made a trade and wants Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. Why didn't you just have whomever, the executive director of SmackDown and Paul Heyman, do this as characters? Everybody knows them. There would have been an element of realism there. It would have worked. It would have been more fun. Why did you do this?
The only thing I can think of is that, well, maybe there's two reasons. One being, actually, maybe there's three now I'm saying this. One being this whole idea of Eric Bischoff being fired. Maybe they didn't want to put him out there. Number two being, maybe they don't want Paul Heyman to be an on-screen character with any kind of power. And even though everybody knows that that's the case, and I'm sure he's going to allude to it in different promos and different things, maybe they were like, you know what, the more that we do that, the more it'll distract from Brock Lesnar, and it wouldn't make sense that he wouldn't have Brock Lesnar on his brand and that kind of thing. But then again, that's like logic, so, you know. And the third option is maybe they specifically wanted Stephanie McMahon to be out there because they wanted her to get more face time and media coverage.
Nope, I really think Stephanie was the last resort. Because I think Shane, for whatever reason, is just like either taking a break or just done. And they must have decided we don't want Heyman for the reasons you mentioned, and we're firing Bischoff apparently, so let's not bother with him.
Even just the execution, even if you ignore the fact that, like, why was Stephanie the one introducing both of these and some different elements like that, but even just the peculiar nature of how they were like, let's do a match and then we're going to announce 5 people and not even necessarily follow their own rules midway through. Like, for that Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross pick, for instance, they were drafted separately. And then they move it on SmackDown, they moved to SmackDown on the WWE Backstage show, and they're drafted as a unit. And it's like, how hard is it to follow the rules that you create, you know? Like, I put up, like, you know, superstar scores. I figured out ahead of time what I wanted the 10 categories to be, and then I stuck with it for 20-something episodes at the end. Like, what the hell? It's not that hard, you know?
I don't necessarily mind that they were drafted separately. I mind that they were drafted separately to the same show when it's like they were put in the pool together. You could have drafted them together. If you're putting them on the same brand, draft them together.
Did you guys get the feel that this is maybe giving them a little bit too much credit, but that they wanted specifically to have some draft picks on Raw, some draft picks on SmackDown, some on the website, some on the bump, and some that thing on Backstage? Like, they just wanted to kind of like,
they wanted to give you a reason to look at all
every
of their programming.
Yeah.
I don't think there'd be any reason for them not to do it that way.
Which, if that's the case, I don't fault them for it, because it makes sense. I mean, that was the entire reason to watch Backstage. I didn't watch Backstage, by the way. Funny enough, out of all the situations that was going on, I went out to eat with Caroline last night, and where we went to eat, outside of that, there was a big TV with WWE Backstage on. So I'm like eating a burger and talking to her and looking over and going, oh, look at that, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. You know, like, out of all the situations, I was like, that's pretty interesting. But so I didn't watch any of that show, and that's something later on I'll watch that and see if it's a garbage show or if it's great or something.
Please do yourself a favor and skip it.
Oh, it's that bad?
It's not. Okay, look, it's not bad. It'll be bad for you because, like me, you're drained and exhausted and done.
Oh, so it's just pointless.
It's just pointless, yeah.
No, that's fun. But I don't fault them for trying to have, like, let's go to the website, let's go here, let's go there, let's do it something on YouTube. I don't think that they did anything on YouTube, but, like, that would have made sense. But if they would have wanted that to be the case, they didn't advertise that all that much. Like, they went out on SmackDown and they had said, here's a bunch of free agents, we didn't get picked and whatever like that, we'll announce them at another time. And I would have thought, with the same amount of breath, they could have very, very easily said, and the remaining free agents that haven't been picked tonight, and, you know, whatever the case may be with those, stay tuned to WWE.com and we will be announcing them. It's like, That's not difficult. And then people would have been like, oh, let me check the app and let me make sure that I've got my notifications on and whatever. And that way, when something happens, ooh, look at this. We got Cesaro to here, or like, any of those kind of things. That's poor execution, I think, all the way around. Although I will say, it is better than that random lottery bullshit.
Let's address the elephant in the room here. How many people actually changed shows?
Let's see. I'll make a quick tally here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Was R-Truth a part of Raw or SmackDown?
SmackDown.
So 10. I got 11 people on the men's Raw singles division side. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. I'm ballparking maybe about like 20 changes because, I mean, they're kind of like they coincide with each other. Somebody like an Aleister Black moving means somebody else moves and whatever like that, and you have to kind of balance the things out. It wouldn't just be like 10 people moving to Raw and that's it. But not a whole lot. I mean, a good portion of people stayed exactly where they were. Like, Ali was on SmackDown to begin with. Apollo Crews had been... I think he was on SmackDown already. Not a whole lot. I mean, there were some big names that moved, and that's going to tip the scales a little bit and make the balance a little bit off. But, I mean, when they would announce some of these, it was like, coming to Monday Night Raw, Cedric Alexander... What? He's already on Raw. He's not coming there. At least once in a while they said staying on, and it was like, alright, that makes sense.
What really pissed me off, though, was they started it with, coming to Raw, the Raw Women's Champion, Becky Lynch. Because they figured it out halfway through of, okay, wait, Ricochet was on Raw, Becky is on, like they figured it out, but man, little things like that piss me off. Like, she's not coming to Raw. She has the Raw title. Why was she even in this draft?
Yeah, that shouldn't have even been necessarily a thing. But then again, they get the opportunity to announce that, and they like their announcements. What was the thing on Raw that they said?
I think this is right after you had said in a group chat that Charlotte and Becky fought each other in some form or fashion 26 times on TV this week. They said, hey, guys, this is the first time that they're fighting on Raw this year. And it's just like, fuck you fucking people.
I went to Cage Match. Great site for checking different stats. And if I'm remembering the numbers correctly, if you count house shows and you count not singles matches, where it's just like, it could be a tag team match or it could be a triple threat or whatever it is, then between January 2018 and the day that I had checked it, they had been in 31 matches together. And I was thinking to myself, oh, okay, well, a lot of those are probably house shows. Let me switch that over to just TV and pay-per-views. And it went only down to 26. And I'm like, oh, God damn it. 26 times we've seen them against each other in the past year and a half. That's awful.
But no, first time ever, we're seeing it on Raw.
Yeah, for the first time in this year, in October, on Raw, we're building Becky Lynch versus Charlotte Flair instead of Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch. That's annoying as hell. And that was one of those moves that as soon as they started doing that, I'm like, don't you fucking dare. And now I'm watching it with Caroline at the time, and I'm like, I know what's going to happen here. If Becky Lynch wins this match, they're going to announce that Charlotte Flair's coming to Raw. And she's like, well, what makes you think that? And I'm like, because I know them. I know that they're going to do this shit. They do it all the time. There's always at least one instance where somebody beats somebody in a match, and then that person goes to that brand. It's going to happen. And then once there was the third announce, I was just like, there you go. And I started writing up the idea of Aleister Black and Zelina Vega and Andrade just going over to Monday Night Raw. I'm like, let me just get this out of the way because it's happening. But I'm not going to break down all the trades. Obviously, if you go to smarkoutmoment.com, you check on the sidebar, you check on the homepage, you will see links to the page that has all of the draft picks and the current list of the free agents and stuff. So we're not going to sit there and go, all right, going to Raw is AJ Styles and Akira Tozawa and Aleister Black and Andrade. That's going to take forever. But I will mention these because these are some of the ones that people maybe might not know because they were announced today on The Bump, which I didn't bother watching. Mojo Rawley, No Way Jose, Sarah Logan, The Iconics, and Hawkins and Ryder are now a part of Raw, meaning every single one that was already on Raw is still on Raw, except for The Iconics. They were on SmackDown. And then on SmackDown, they got Cesaro, Luke Harper, Drake Maverick, Fire and Desire, and Dana Brooke. So they got Cesaro, Drake Maverick, and Dana Brooke. That's the only differences. We got a bunch of free agents, and I think it's worth starting. Oh, we're in discussion. We're 15 minutes in. We're not starting. I think it's worth talking about the free agents right now because that's the next step of this. We don't know where they're going to go. Here are the free agents that have not been signed at the moment. AOP, The Ascension, Big Show, Alicia Fox, kinda, The Clones, The Hardy Boys, Lars Sullivan, Sheamus, and the Usos. Oh, and Naomi. I don't know why I have her name out down here. And Ember Moon, Mickie James, Nia Jax, and Ruby Riott. So those are the ones that we still don't know the placement for. We do know at the very least that Nia Jax has just pretty much said the reason why she didn't get picked was because she's on the injured list. We can assume that applies to Ember Moon, Mickie James, Ruby Riott, Sheamus, etc. Lars Sullivan, yeah. And then that's part of the Jeff Hardy situation with the Hardy Boys, so that sort of applies to Matt, because why would they bother or whatever. AOP, though, there's really no explanation for that. The Ascension, there's definitely no explanation for it. The Clones, there's no explanation for it. They're not injured. The Usos, they're just kind of sitting around waiting what to do. Naomi's the same situation. What are you guys thinking about this whole free agent bullshit?
I mean, I don't care. It's pretty much the overriding feeling of all this stuff is just a whole wave of apathy, because essentially it's down to the fact that they don't have any plans for any of these people at the moment, or they're kicking off TV for a genuine reason, and they don't want to assign them to a brand and then change their mind like a couple of days later and want to put them onto the other brand instead. So,
Right.
So I don't. At least that's better than what they did, which led to the wildcard rule after the Superstar Shake-Up, which is they moved them over to them and then realised they didn't want to do it and then changed a load of people back to the original places. So it's better than that, but it's still not great. But I can understand, with most of these people being injured, why they just don't want to waste time putting it on them when the whole landscape of the WWE could be different in 2 or 3 months' time when they're back and healthy.
Yeah, exactly what Callum said. A lot of these were injured. I think the report came out about the Usos that they don't know creatively where they want to go with them, so they haven't put them anywhere. As a result, they haven't put Naomi anywhere because they're keeping couples together, and Naomi's married to Jimmy. Shout out to the end of the greatest main event feud of all time, Sarah Logan and Dana Brooke. That will no longer be a thing.
Well, I mean, they could just cop out.
See, but I think they're trying their hardest right now to avoid copping out, except we haven't touched on this, and I guess it's because you didn't watch backstage, but we don't actually know who Raw is getting for Cross and Bliss.
They constituted something like consideration for future draft picks or something?
Yep. Therefore, that means at any moment, you could be like, oh, Roman's on Raw now as consideration for Bliss and Cross.
I think more than likely that's their explanation of saying we don't have anybody to trade over. And what do we do with this? Crap,
Yeah.
let's say we'll figure it out later. It's just a rephrasing of that. And more than likely they'll forget about it in a week.
It's corporate speak for saying that maybe Raw would be entitled to picking up more of the free agents before SmackDown gets an opportunity for them or something to that effect. But what it actually means is we wanted to move Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross over to SmackDown because we realised we fucked up with their women's division and leave us alone.
Yeah.
That's what it actually means.
Because before that, I mean, I wrote up the article for Bleach Report. You can check out my opinions about that before they had announced a lot of these free agents and stuff. SmackDown was awful for the women's side. They had, leaving Monday Night Raw and SmackDown with those picks that they had done, they had 5 women on that roster. And those 5 women were Bayley, the injured Sasha Banks, the just coming off of injury that nobody really cares about, Tamina. Let's be honest. Tamina has never been a featured player. She's been in the company for a decade and never won the friggin' title. Lacey Evans and Carmella. So Lacey Evans is apparently like a babyface now, I guess. They had her teaming up with Natalya, and my philosophy is essentially, I guess, that they're just going to have her and Carmella be the 2 top babyfaces. But they were really looking bad because, in comparison at that point, Monday Night Raw had Alexa Bliss, Asuka, Nikki Cross, Kairi Sane, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Lana, Liv Morgan, Natalya, and Zelina Vega. It was like, Jesus, God, this is not at all balanced. Even with the idea of, like, if SmackDown would have gotten Dana Brooke, Iconics, Fire and Desire, and Sarah Logan, that would not have been a good roster. Because, I mean, Dana Brooke's made some headway. Sarah Logan hasn't tapped into what she's had to offer. But you can't really tell me that they're going to build a whole division around, like, Bayley against the Iconics or something like that. It's just not going to work. They need something to kind of, like, light the fire up there a little bit. And it seems like they realized, of course, after they did this whole draft thing, that this Bliss and Cross being on Raw wasn't going to be necessarily the best way to do that. Now, this also kills the women's tag team division, to a certain extent.
No, because they have that loophole intact.
They're going to do that still? Because they didn't say anything about the 24/7 title, so I just assumed that they were kind of...
See, I made a post about this on eWrestling News. They made it pretty clear they're going to do the old Undisputed Championship deal with the women's tag titles where they can still go wherever they want, but if they lose the belts, then they're exclusive to Raw. And then in the case of the 24/7 title, which was rumored to be a USA wanted title, it sounds like it's staying right on Raw. But they could always do the thing where on pay-per-views, anybody could go for it. You know what I mean?
It is pretty much going to be, based on what I've heard, a Raw exclusive title because it's a USA created title. It was the USA executives' idea to spice up the 3rd hour of Raw, which they gave up on in a couple of weeks and just decided to put it on all of the programming, but it's a USA created title.
Remember the electric chair, anybody?
The electric chair?
Exactly. The 1 week where Corey Graves had a segment called The Electric Chair and Sami Zayn was the guest.
Oh, God, yeah.
You could have asked me about AEW. Ooh, and it went away, like, right away. They never did another one.
Yeah, terrible. Yeah, I mean, I guess the 24/7 title sticking with USA, that makes sense. Even that sucks. I know that a lot of people were complaining about the idea that R-Truth and Carmella are broken up, and I guess if they're not going to be able to really do anything with the 24/7 title, then what's the point of having them be a pair anymore if they're not going to do anything anyway? But let's talk about the women's division. I mean, we're on that discussion, so let's keep that in mind. So we do have the Raw Women's Champion on Raw, the SmackDown Women's Champion on SmackDown. That makes sense. SmackDown and Raw can both have the tag team titles, but Raw has those champions right now. They're firmly heels, of course. Asuka and Kairi Sane are definitely heels now. And we don't know quite yet what's happening with Liv Morgan. They used an old graphic for her. She didn't pop out, she didn't do anything. But at least as far as like a balancing act, let's look at Monday Night Raw. Becky Lynch is top babyface, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte, unfortunately, seems like she's the top heel. Again.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking not looking forward to Charlotte versus Becky another 10 goddamn times.
I don't think we see it until the Rumble.
I don't want to see it at all. The last thing I want, too, is for them to think that they can just do this at WrestleMania.
Ronda's coming back.
we've
But
got
she's
us.
going to be on SmackDown.
Yeah, I think that she would go to SmackDown. If there isn't something like a big surprise like that, then what do we get?
Or does it have to be? And I know, saying this again for WrestleMania, does it have to be a big deal?
It should.
Because, well, yeah, but is anything a big deal? Is the overriding question that I ask on this topic, and starting to just be repeating. What exactly can they do in any of their matches now that would be considered a big deal?
Rumor has it Cain Velasquez against Bobby Lashley, which is...
Well, no, bullshit. That's from fucking Shepard. Fuck that. That's just not gonna happen.
It better not.
I believe they'll put Tyson Fury and Cain Velasquez in the main event of WrestleMania before they give anything to Bobby Lashley.
I don't disregard anything anymore. We had Kevin Owens drop the Universal title to Goldberg so he could lose it to Brock Lesnar so he could hold it for a year. I'm like,
well,
yeah.
Well, let's
year and
talk
a half.
Let's talk about that elephant in the room of what Callum just said. Does anything have to be a big deal anymore? Crown Jewel looks like a far more meaningful card than anything WrestleMania could even pull. They have quite a lot of stuff going towards this Crown Jewel card, and I just don't know. I don't know if WrestleMania means what it once did. But that being said, if Ronda doesn't do the one-on-one with Becky, then yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we just get Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch in an Iron Woman match or something.
Yeah, but what other option do they have? The only other option is that they split up the Kabuki Warriors and then one of Asuka and Kairi Sane face her.
Well,
Because nobody else on the women's side is up to the star power level unless they can build them up between now and WrestleMania to take on Becky Lynch other than Charlotte.
You could always go with Nia Jax. That's a good option. I'm just saying, Nia Jax. They could always do you wouldn't be the man if it wasn't for me, and she wins the Rumble coming back, and then that's your Becky Lynch match. It won't be the main event, but it'll be your Becky Lynch match.
Now, there had been rumors a while ago that they had some plan for the next WrestleMania, and that it wasn't supposed to be Ronda Rousey, and it wasn't supposed to be Charlotte Flair, but it was Becky Lynch versus blank. And it was this big name and all this other kind of stuff, and I've never understood that, because to me, I could look at the whole roster and I was like, nobody seems like they're a big name. That doesn't make any sense. The only thing I can think of is that their game plan is that Shayna Baszler loses that title, wins the Royal Rumble, and challenges Becky Lynch. It's the only thing I can think of.
The only thing I can think of outside of that would be Steph.
Seth against Becky?
Stephanie.
Oh, I was like, what the?
Steph.
I hope that's not the case either.
I think there are definitely options available, but let's face it, she's not going to main event WrestleMania this year. So
no, I mean, it's not going to be the main event.
Brock
so in which case her match doesn't need to be that big of a deal, because at the end of the day, she should be the one who's carrying the match. She's the star power. She should be able to carry anybody to a decent level.
But I don't want to see her go from her crowning moment, if you're going to compare her to Austin, her WrestleMania 14 moment, all the way to, having to have a Scott Hall WrestleMania 18 quality match.
Well, no, but I think there's a likelihood, especially considering the trend that there has been on pay-per-view this year, that she opens WrestleMania as opposed to closing it this year. I mean, she's opened pretty much every pay-per-view, it feels like, this year. Does she open SummerSlam?
I don't like that whole...
She opened Hell in a Cell.
Where the opening match is so much different now. It is like a main event position, because it's like starting off with a bang. I hate that shit.
Well, even if we just look at the rest of the roster that we've got going on, we got the Asuka, Kairi Sane, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Lana, Liv Morgan, Natalya, Zelina, Sarah Logan, and Iconics. That's what we're working with. Any feuds that you're looking forward to seeing over the next couple of months? Because even if we ignore WrestleMania, we got 6 months.
Liv Morgan versus Charlotte Flair, if they bother to keep up with it.
No, there's nothing really.
No,
But
I'm not. Like,
I'm huge fans of Asuka and Kairi Sane, and so if they're going to wrestle anybody, then I'm going to be interested because they're going to be the ones wrestling in it. But they can only go through all the people so many times.
I feel like they killed the idea that they could have had Becky and Bayley really get into a feud, and they could have had Charlotte and Sasha get into a feud. And for them to be on SmackDown, I don't understand that move.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make much sense other than the fact that they decided to move. Well, for some reason, they decided that they're going to move Becky and Sasha over. Was pretty obvious what they were going to do to try and separate them up. But then they decided to give Bayley back the women's championship, probably because they wanted to turn her mega heel Bayley. And so they thought, well, if she's going to have this change of attitude and she's going to finally get rid of the Bayley buddies and change her music, change her look, all that other stuff. She can't then lose the women's championship match that we have her booked for.
But
and to
here's
that
an
point,
idea.
well, you're in complete control of that. You don't need to give her a women's championship match for her.
Right.
Just like
we're in an era where there's no rematch clauses. She shouldn't have had it to begin with.
Yeah, and it's a situation where, okay, well, people who are WWE apologists will make the argument, well, Bayley was making all that change, so they had to give her the title, so that may have changed their plans a little bit. So yeah, but they're in complete control of all of this thing. It's not like Bayley held Vince McMahon up at gunpoint and said, "You better give me a title shot" or whatever. He was the one that green-lighted the entire thing, so they create their own problems at the moment.
I'm sorry, are we experiencing fully done Callum Wiggins today?
I've been done for a long time. You don't.
I know, but it seems like today it's coming out.
Well, it's just it's gotten to a point where it's not so much like they're just incompetent. It's incompetent to a point of self-destructive, where they create their own problems and then they choose the absolute worst way of getting out of those problems. Which leads to more problems and then more terrible solutions to those problems. It's a vicious circle, which all extends to the one person on top who has absolutely zero control or idea of what he's doing.
To that point, this whole thing with the Fiend and Rollins has resulted in some very interesting media choices by WWE to send people to Forbes for interviews. And maybe they gave Forbes this line of questioning, maybe they didn't. But, like, there's an actual article by Forbes where Becky, McIntyre, Roman, the OC are like, yeah, I think fans just don't want to let stories play out anymore. And it's just like, to Callum's point, you're in full fucking control. You didn't need to put them in the ring together. You booked a no-win situation, and then you're like, I can't believe they're mad at that.
Well, I think when they talk about fans complaining, well, to an extent they're right. Fans are complaining a lot. So what I say to those fans is, stop watching. Find something else. You're wrestling fans. There's tons of other wrestling out there. Find something else instead of just going onto Twitter and complain. I know what we're doing now is essentially shitting on WWE, but at the end of the day, you two write for it, and I'm set in my ways, and a lot of other people are as well. But instead of just doing that, just change the channel, find something else to watch. That's probably what I'm hoping that they take from those interviews, which I assume those interviews are meant to try and babyface WWE and try and make them look like the good guys in this situation. And hopefully the result is it turns millions more fans off, because that's what they deserve.
But let's back on the draft. They put the Fiend on SmackDown, and they have kept Rollins on Raw. They book a match for Crown Jewel, so already we're going to be, 3 weeks into this draft, and it's going to be a SmackDown guy versus a Raw guy, and you're going under the guise of, if Seth loses this match, there's no world title on Raw, so what the fuck do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, that match is very indicative of, God damn it, what the hell are you thinking? Because they ran into this issue with Hell in a Cell, And they did not need to book that match, and we've talked about that. It didn't need to go down that way, and Vince McMahon was apparently laughing about it, which speaks volumes about the idea that, like, why would you ever be happy about the fact that people are hating your stuff so much?
Well, that's yeah. It's just his WWE is there to just amuse Vince McMahon, not no other purpose. Yeah.
Hold on. So, because this was reported by Fightful Select, so I feel a slight obligation to say that it said he was laughing when they initially started booing Rollins, like during the match. But then when the pay-per-view went off the air with them chanting AEW, the laughter stopped. And to me, I think it's indicative of the fact that they weren't going to do Rollins and The Fiend at Crown Jewel. They weren't. They had Rollins booked for this Hogan tag match. They moved Randy to Raw. They were going to do that.
And then they decide to do this thing again, which is like, it's a no-win situation. And we'll talk about this, obviously.
But it's not a no-win situation. I guess it depends on, is Cain Velasquez on Raw? If Cain Velasquez is going to be WWE Champion on Raw, with The Fiend being Universal Champion on SmackDown.
They didn't bother to do the whole Cain Velasquez part of the draft, so that's kind of confusing about that. But that in itself, that's the only way out. Like, if they booked this, and it's a Falls Count Anywhere match, and of course this ended up being this, I hate that they are really harping on this a lot, but somebody had tweeted out, they're like, hey, Falls Count Anywhere match, is that going to end in a DQ too? And then, of course, Rollins responded back, that didn't end in a DQ, it ended in a no contest, and the referee stopped the match. But you shouldn't have to specify the details about that. It ended in a fucking DQ. Just acknowledge it. Did you win the match? Did you keep the belt? Did it have a finish? No. So it's basically DQ. But the whole Bray Wyatt thing didn't need to happen the way that it happened at Hell in a Cell. And then they have to know that people were upset about that. And it's not good to upset people. No matter how much the whole, like, well, we're getting them talking kind of philosophy is, that's not your goal. And booking this other match at Crown Jewel means if Bray Wyatt wins, they have to have Brock Lesnar lose that title. And then you open up a can of worms of, well, motherfucker, why did you have to bury Kofi like that if you were just going to have Brock lose that championship? And then that creates, it's always like this argument of, why do we have to keep explaining our bad decisions? And I would love to hear like a WWE publicist do something that's like, kind of like if Bruce Pritchard were able to talk about current product stuff on something to wrestle with. It would be great to hear this idea of like, well, we did this because of that. And then you go, well, then why did you do that? Well, we did this because of that. And if you have to draw a whole fucking diagram just to get to the point of, these are the reasons why we did our 15 horrible ideas. You shouldn't have to do that. Then you're overcomplicating things and you should have just done something simpler, you know? So we're going to see with Crown Jewel if this is a complete mess or not. But I was hoping at the very least when it came to WWE Backstage that they were going to do this big blockbuster trade was going to be Bray Wyatt going to Monday Night Raw. Because in my mind, I was thinking, oh, okay, well, if they move Wyatt back to Raw, then he can win that championship at Crown Jewel. And depending on who he trades over, or they trade over to SmackDown in favor for him, then that can change things up quite a bit as well. Like, if they could have done, like, Bray Wyatt trades over to Raw in place of, for instance, Kevin Owens, or Rey Mysterio, or Drew McIntyre, you know, whoever they wanted to do.
Wait, Ray's on Raw?
Yeah, Ray's on Raw.
Okay, that furthers my belief that Cain Velasquez will be... They'll have the change go down, and then they'll say, as a result of this, because Raw needs a world champion, Cain Velasquez is now a full-time member of the Raw roster.
Which kind of defeats the purpose of having the sports-oriented thing on SmackDown, and then they've already pissed off Fox. It's like
listen, I'm trying to think with logic.
I know, you're trying to apply logic to a situation that they've already booked themselves into a corner that they can't win. It's like they bury Kofi just to put the belt on Lesnar again, just to have him lose it to Kane, just to put him on the opposite brand that they really should have him on. just to have the title not do the whole thing with Bray, just to have that at Saudi Arabia, just to do, and it's like, it's so needlessly complicated, and I hate it so much. So I'm not feeling that that's in a good position with this draft. The women's division, I guess, like, let's wrap up a little bit of talk about that, because we were talking about that earlier. SmackDown has Alexa, Bayley, Carmella, Lacey, Nikki, Sasha, Tamina, Fire and Desire, and Dana Brooke. Bayley right now is the champion. They can't do, like, any real worthwhile feud of, like, Bayley and Tamina. They can't do Bayley and Sasha because they're best friends and everything.
I'm thinking Bayley Carmella first.
Yeah.
And then we get to, like, Lacey as a buffer. And then somewhere down the line, I'm going to keep saying Ronda because I don't know. Like, they got to do something with her.
I really hope they don't do Alexa and Nikki against Sasha and Bayley.
So how long do you think before 2 of the 4 horsewomen get those tag titles so they can travel back and forth?
Again, I don't really want to project any of this stuff because there's no point, because we can't predict anything because they don't know what they're going to be doing next week. So, but
I don't think that they're getting the tag titles anytime soon.
Bayley and Sasha will end up feuding soon. Not to say like maybe in the next not in the next couple of months or so, but I think probably by the turn of the year, Sasha will have turned babyface and will be feuding with Bayley because they can't turn Bayley back babyface again after so soon after that thing.
By the way, babyface Bayley, as much as it was nice to see an evolution of sorts, this opens a very dicey situation where she might just be generic as fuck.
Oh yeah, so well, you have like heard her new music and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Just
the music's terrible.
Like once an original overflow of stuff where she's turned heel and she's like gotten rid of all of the old paraphernalia that was associated with her. As soon as that wears off and she loses the title, she just becomes a woman essentially. So she's just somebody on the roster.
And that's my problem with it. At least with the Bayley, the original Bayley character, you have a full-fledged character. Like, she's very innocent, very pure. She, sometimes lacks the aggression, and that's why she loses matches. Yes, you've told the story where you give her an edge, but in giving her an edge and the most generic royalty-free theme music you could find, you've made her another woman on the roster.
Well, there's at least the potential to tell a story with Sasha Banks, which is they start together as a tag team again, and they're on the same brand, they're trying to dominate it together, but Sasha, maybe it's the idea that Bayley is now getting the more manipulative and the power is going to her head, that type of thing, and Sasha's trying to bring her back down, and that can be the thing that turns Sasha babyface in order to try and take Bayley down, because Bayley's become too consumed by the dark side or whatever you want to go along that sort of route.
But you see, that's also booking yourself into a hole, because Sasha herself just went through this metamorphosis where she's like, fuck everybody, I'm in it for me. It's like, okay, they're finally playing fully on this thing that they're kind of selfish and they, cried on the floor at WrestleMania, whether that's true or not, they're playing on it. But there's no star power, so you kind of want to see them fight each other because that's the only star power you have, and you can't do that, and this is just a mess.
I think that they're not even bothering to do all that. I think we're getting Bayley, Carmella. Sasha is just going to sit out for a while with this hip injury or back injury or whatever it is. Bliss and Cross will end up feuding with Fire and Desire for a little bit. Dana Brooke's going to be a pushover that Bayley can beat. Lacey Evans will be turning babyface. I don't know how the hell that's going to work out, because her character is all based off the idea of, like, belittling other people.
Well, they turned Alexa Bliss babyface, and that was basically her entire character.
Yeah, true.
You can actually play off of the fact that she was in the military and is an all-American woman.
Yeah, it would essentially be along those lines. It's going to be like pretty bizarre to watch feuds between Bayley and Alexa Bliss and Bayley and Lacey Evans, where Bayley is the heel in the equation.
Well, with Alexa, they have that built-in story where Alexa can be like, I told you they were shitheads to me and you didn't want to, like, they were mean to me when I started at the Performance Center just because I wasn't in love with wrestling as a kid. So, like, that is at least a built-in story. But with everybody else in that roster outside of Mela and Alexa, you're not going to see anything good.
And I tend to think that this is just going to end up being something as simple as Lacey Evans versus Sasha Banks is where they're leading. That, like, Lacey beats Bayley, and then they do Sasha against Lacey. I'm not thinking that this is going to be all that much more. The only thing around that, other than that, is Ronda Rousey. And then, of course, that becomes Ronda Rousey beats Bayley. And then at that point, what do they do at WrestleMania? Probably Ronda versus Sasha. And I don't really care. They already did it. So I'm not looking forward to that. And I actually kind of was thinking that maybe I have nothing that points in this direction, so this is just pure talking out of my ass. Maybe Fox doesn't really want the SmackDown Women's division. Like,
you think they don't care much for...
Yeah. It would not shock me, because what have you guys heard about Fox and the women's division? I've only heard they wanted Becky and they wanted Charlotte.
And they wanted Ronda.
Yeah.
And then there's your WrestleMania main event from this year. So outside of the WrestleMania main event of this year, it sounds like
that they didn't pay any attention to it and that they don't care about anything about other than the star power, which obviously Becky and yeah, but I mean it's like that's like the obvious thing. That's like saying, I don't know, you're picking people to play just a game of touch football. And it's like that Simpsons thing where it's like, all right, I'm going to pick my dad, Homer, and then somebody else comes by, and it's like, I'm going to pick this NFL player, like...
Yeah.
Like, of course you'd go do that. Of course you'd want Becky and Charlotte and Ronda. And then at that point, if that's all they cared about, then they probably don't pay any attention to it. And
I'm surprised they didn't put up a stink to get Becky.
It's weird that if that's who they cared about, that they didn't get either of those two. And we still don't know if Ronda Rousey technically is coming back. Triple H has said she's coming back, and she keeps pitching these ideas, but, I mean, we've heard 1,000 things in the wrestling world that ended up not being true.
She's coming back. They put her on the reality show. That's your WWE fill of Ronda until that show ends, and I think if Charlotte doesn't win that Royal Rumble, Ronda Rousey is.
Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced yet, because I can't be that Ronda is or isn't coming back, or if Ronda plans on coming back but then gets pregnant and that delays it, that sort of thing. There's a lot of things up in the air at the moment. I also wouldn't be surprised that Fox doesn't really care too much about the women's division, but you can't really blame them, because the company doesn't seem to. Well, they like to let us know that they care about the women's division. So I think they're more concerned about letting people know they care about the women's division than actually caring about the women's division.
It is weird, though, because Becky was the first person to grace the stage of SmackDown on Fox. And she's also the first person to grace the stage of the second episode of SmackDown on Fox. You would just really think, like, maybe it's that she's a package deal with Seth, and SmackDown probably wasn't going to give up Roman for Seth, but they would give up, Becky if push came to shove. Well, we won't budge on Roman, but we'll budge on Becky.
Well, I think it's more they wouldn't budge on Brock, and so they get Seth. Brock is the get for Fox. Brock is I would say the only person they care about, but the main person that Fox cares about having.
See, I'm not as concerned about the Becky thing. To me, the Charlotte situation is the weird thing. Because all signs pointed to the idea that Charlotte should just stay on SmackDown and that she should be the top babyface there, because they were booking her as a babyface.
Well,
And
the
like
thing
she could
about
have feuded with Sasha, and she could have feuded with Bailey, and she could have done this, could have done that.
Well, then you're
Well-
getting into the Heyman wanted Aleister Black.
And that's what's weird about this, though, because I can't imagine that they would say that Heyman wanted Aleister Black so badly that they were like, okay, we'll move Black and Andrade and Zelina and Charlotte and screw that all up just because he really wants Aleister Black.
But maybe it's not that hard of a push if you think, all right, I'm Heyman, I want Black and maybe even Andrade, and it's like, hey, Vince, Charlotte on Raw, more star power for Raw. It's not that hard of a push.
It just kind of seems weird that we're in another situation again where, I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with me on this, but any time that SmackDown seems like it's supposed to get the better end of the deal, it doesn't. It's like they're shooting themselves in the foot to spite themselves. Like, that's why, with this new deal with Fox, well, let's be honest. What have been the two main things that are an indication of how they're going to treat SmackDown that we've gotten in the past year and a half? We got Raw vs. SmackDown at Survivor Series, and we got the draft. Those are the two main things. SmackDown got decimated. It was supposed to be an entire blowout of Raw winning every single match, and then when they didn't do that, they specifically were like, no, this doesn't fucking count. And then on this draft, I really feel like SmackDown didn't get this big, giant star power situation. At least when it comes to the women's division. Some of the other things we can argue about a little bit more, but if you read the article, I think that Raw wins in every single division.
Except SmackDown does have the two people that have been the bane of Tony's existence for the last several years, and that's Roman and Brock. And we've seen in the past that that's enough, no matter what's going on, to facilitate main event of WrestleMania, main event of SummerSlam, main event of whatever they want. So maybe when time comes and we get Roman versus Brock,
Oof.
that's your thing, that Fox is the A show.
I am going to be so fucking pissed if I buy tickets for WrestleMania and the card that we get is Cain Velasquez versus Bobby Lashley for the Universal title, Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE title, some kind of bullshit fatal four-way on SmackDown for the women's title where it's like Bayley and Sasha and Lacey and Carmella or Alexa or something like that, and then the Raw women's title is Becky against Charlotte. I'm gonna be fucking pissed.
And Callum just doesn't care.
Well, I just like, I'm gonna be so pissed, and I'm still gonna watch it, and
I'm gonna have to watch it.
Well,
but...
no, I know you have to watch it, but it's just a more perpetual cycle. It's like, I'm gonna be so angry when they do this, and then they did it, and next week they're gonna do something else that I'm gonna be mad about, and that's not just. I'm not trying to just like single out you or anything. That's the attitude of pretty much every WWE fan. It feels like right now. Of like, they're gonna do this and that's not gonna be good, and I'm not gonna enjoy that, but I'm still gonna, tune in anyway. It's like, I think you have to get to a point of, especially at this point in time, to as much as you possibly can just switch your mind off in terms of what makes logical sense, and just try and enjoy the things that you can. And then when you see something that makes absolutely no logical sense, almost block it out and pretend that it's not happening.
I really don't want WWE to be Suicide Squad, where I watch the movie and say, well, Deadshot was cool.
Well, it's already past that point, because who do you tune in and say, that guy's, it's like, I can't see too much to get really infused about, especially on the women's side of things on either side. But even if you extend into the tag teams and the actual male single stars, there's nothing that's really groundbreakingly interesting, because all these because for the last 6 months we've seen all these guys wrestle each other.
Yeah, the wild card rule really messed a lot of that up.
Yeah, so it's like the argument of like, wow, WWE's been so shit since the brand split happened. It wasn't the brand split's problem, it's the fact that they can't stick to that thing, or that they just bury all feuds into the ground because they can't help themselves. They would do that if they had even if everybody could wrestle anybody at any time, which we saw in the wildcard rule happening, where people could just move from one roster to the other. They still stuck to the same 5 or 6 feuds that ran for about 3 or 4 months at a time. It's what they do.
Thank God that Shane McMahon thing's over with.
Yeah,
That's one good thing.
Maybe Vince McMahon still thinks that it's 1980s where you can run a program for 4 or 5 months because you only see it on one pay-per-view that entire time. But no, you have to see it every single show, and it gets redundant very, very quickly because everyone wrestles a very similar style. All the segments they do is saying, "Oh, it's going to be a contract signing. Oh, there's going to be a melee, and people have to separate afterwards. Oh, they might have a tag team match where they have to team together, but they don't actually like each other, so they one of them drops off the apron and leaves the other one to fend for themselves. Blah de blah de blah. It's the same stuff over and over and over again with the same people over and over and over again. You know, pretty same old.
I would like to point out that even with all of the cool stuff happening on Wednesday nights, the fact that there is this drain on so much of what is considered quote unquote big news items has really taken a lot of the enthusiasm and fun out of the Wednesday night stuff.
Well, at least the Wednesday night stuff feels like something, not so much of an escape, but for me in particular, because I don't have to write about this stuff, but it feels like a bit of difference. It feels, with NXT, I'm going to enjoy most of the wrestling and I embrace most of the characters, and it feels not so much vibrant, but it just feels good, and AEW feels very different. Not like so decidedly different that it's not completely indistinguishable from WWE, because there's a lot of things that's very similar between them and WWE, but different enough, and there's new enough people, and there's new enough feuds and storylines because we haven't seen a lot of these people wrestle before, that there's an inbuilt intrigue surrounding them. Same with like NWA Power, same with stuff that's going on with a lot of other promotions. It's just when you have to watch 3 hours of Raw and 2 hours of SmackDown and you see the same matches repeated over and over again. I mean, if we go into like, I know we're just like bouncing around all over the place, but going to the men's SmackDown side, they put Baron Corbin and Chad Gable on the same roster.
Fucking show, yeah.
Like, of all things to do, you had that match that's happened like 4 times in the last like 4 weeks.
You know they're gonna keep doing it too.
And they're gonna have another feud, and to continue the feud, they're gonna have another match. Maybe not this week, but in the next couple of weeks, whatever. They might fight. Maybe Chad Gable joins Team Hogan, and so they're part of that thing as well. So that's going to continue even longer.
Well, he can't do it because he's not Chad Gable anymore. Now he's Shorty Gable.
You.
I fucking hate that so much.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just, it's just, it doesn't. It just means they've just ended up like extending a lot of feuds, which they could have used the draft to kill off and say, okay, we're going to be presenting fresh matches now. Like the things they were saying all the time, wow, this could be the last time these guys fight each other. Fuck off. Everyone's going to fight everyone for the end of time because that's what you do.
But let's move on to that kind of a discussion, because I do think that this is worth meriting, is the idea of that they didn't change a lot of things around, so they did avoid doing the most logical thing, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you guys would agree with me on this one. The very first thing that I would do if I were in their position for a draft would be write down everybody's names and think, what have we already done a million times? And what are we interested to see that we haven't done? And then I'd do multiple lists, because why wouldn't you do multiple lists? And try to go, all right, let's put everybody in these groups. We want to see these feuds and these feuds. How can we get the maximum amount of them over the next 6 months or whatever? Because we also don't know. They could do another superstar shakeup. At any point in time, WWE pulls this crap out of their ass where they just go, oh, we're going to do the wildcard rule. You know, they could be like January, and they could realize that within 3 months that they've ran out of all their feuds. And they could call something like the Royal Rumble Rewind, and we go back and we redo different trades or something, you know, stupid like that. But I would think that you would look at this. Love these ambulances. I would think of this like with the Gable and Corbin thing, that would be like, all right, we already ran that into the ground. We can't do that anymore. Who would we like to see Baron Corbin and Chad Gable feud with going forward? Because he would be Chad Gable, because I wouldn't be stupid enough to call him Shorty Gable. And I would, like, I like Baron Corbin more than a lot of other people do. And I could list off maybe 10 people that I would be interested in seeing Baron Corbin feud with. Like, I'd be cool with a Braun Strowman feud. I'd be cool with them somehow finding out a way to do a Brock Lesnar feud, but it would basically just be Lesnar beating the shit out of him, so they wouldn't pull that off well. Daniel Bryan would make a lot of sense now that he's a babyface. Roman Reigns versus Baron Corbin could potentially be something decent for at least 1 month. They couldn't do a 6-month feud or something. The Miz didn't really get a feud with him all that much. Maybe you get somebody like Kevin Owens versus Baron Corbin. You know, there's options that I think you can have for almost any person. Now, some people not as much. I can't think of a single feud I'd want to see with Mojo Rawley. I don't think that there's really anything you can tap into when it comes to Eric Young or Titus O'Neil, or even at this point, I'd rule out some of the bigger names. Like, I can't think of anybody that I would really want to see Bray Wyatt feud with. I can't think of anybody that I'd really want to see Drew McIntyre feud with, just because none of it stands out to me all that much. But there are options, and I mean, if you gave me enough time, I'd sit and think about something, but that's what I would do the very first thing. And when they announced something like Corbin going over to SmackDown, I was like, alright, well, Gable needs to go over to Raw. They move him over to SmackDown. I'm like, motherfucker, like, here we are on SmackDown. If you look at that list, Ali and Gable and Bryan and Roman and Elias and a lot of these people that have been already stuck in that same thing, what do you do with some of these people? Elias is a name that stands out to me. That's one of the stupidest mistakes, I think. How do they have him on SmackDown still?
Well, I think it's just a guy in the midcard. That's pretty much my assessment of it. I know, obviously, on Raw he would get more time to do his concerts, so it does make more sense to do it. But I just don't think they really care beyond the first 3 or 4 picks they made. So it was just, okay, we'll take this guy because, you know, he's got one name. Maybe he'll be able to get some attention with his maybe get some YouTube hits with his musical performances, and then we'll be that sounds good. They don't know who Elias is. Like, how many Fox executives know who Elias is?
Well, I don't think that the Fox and USA side of things factored in here. That's the thing.
Well, they did for the top picks, and that was the ones that WWE prioritized, and then WWE pretty much just put all the other names probably in a hat and just pulled them out.
Here's what I kind of think. I kind of think that Fox probably came to the table and said, these are the people we want. Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Brock Lesnar, Ronda Rousey, Bray Wyatt, maybe even Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and I kind of don't think anybody else. Maybe the New Day.
This is what probably happened. Fox came in and gave a list to WWE about the people they wanted, and then USA came and gave WWE a list of what they wanted, and it's the exact same people because they're the only people that WWE care about, and ergo it's the only people that USA and Fox care about.
Yeah, and then I think
just
that
a bunch of filler.
I think that Paul Heyman had a couple other names, and that's why I personally think that the Monday Night Raw breakdown, even though we've seen so many of these feuds already, and that's disappointing, and that's going to be real frustrating over the next bunch of months, I still think that they have the better roster.
Well, yeah, I feel like with Heyman in control and seemingly adding a lot more creative direction than whatever Bischoff was doing in the previous regime, means that he has plans for a lot of these people. Whereas you look at the SmackDown side of things and think, okay, there's just a lot of people they've thrown together because they were the people that Heyman or other people just weren't interested in or didn't really care enough to try and make a case for.
Here's another name that strikes me as like, what the hell are they thinking? We have the guy that has a USA Network show on the Fox station.
Oh, yeah.
The Miz is on there.
You know, I didn't even think about that.
If you're Fox, you don't want that. Because whenever he mentions Miz and Mrs., that's advertising the opposite network. Now, if you're of USA, that's great because you're getting free advertising on a different network. But that's one of the most boneheaded ideas. That doesn't make any sense to me. And the Miz TV is also another segment, just like Elias, that works better on Raw because you have a full extra hour that you can do a talking segment. If you do Miz TV on a SmackDown, that's a quarter of the show for the most part.
Yeah, there's again, I don't think there was a huge amount of thought thrown into anything beyond the initial picks. I mean, you can see that there wasn't a huge amount of thought based on the order in which they picked people. Like, in what universe do the Lucha House Party go out before Heavy Machinery? I know it's like, just tag team over a tag team, but at least Heavy Machinery have won a few matches in the last couple of months. With Titus O'Neil going on Raw, Titus O'Neil hasn't had a legitimate wrestling match on Raw since August 2018, and he was picked ahead of Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins, who were tag team champions earlier this year.
He was picked ahead of Elias, picked of Liv Morgan, the Iconics.
But
Cesaro wasn't drafted, and
not until
was.
Yeah. You look at Humberto Carrillo, somebody who I love to just kind of say I don't understand why he's given these different positions and stuff. He was
drafted on TV, right?
He was drafted on TV above
Eric Rowan.
With
Roman Reigns for the last few months.
Above Ali, Buddy Murphy, Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, Jinder Mahal, Carmella, R-Truth, Samoa Joe, The Miz, Akira Tozawa, King Corbin, Shelton Benjamin, which that's, whatever. Rey Mysterio, Gable. Like, you mean to tell me that they picked Carrillo before they were like, we'll wait to get around to Samoa Joe or The Miz or...
Yeah, I'm sure SmackDown doesn't have any interest in Rey Mysterio. We'll just take this.
Yeah,
they're all gonna want to have their hands on the bland-looking Mexican dude.
Even in that capacity,
guys, you're forgetting here. Fox gets 3 Nacho Libres for the price of 1.
Even in that capacity, though, even if you just go like all the Raw drafts versus all the SmackDown drafts, if we're trying to apply realism to this, that means that Raw decided that Shelton Benjamin was more worthwhile than Rey Mysterio because he was above him. That makes no sense. Now, I get the reason why they put that there is because they wanted each round to start with a big name, and that way they could get people talking, and Rey Mysterio being the last part of the next round and Shelton Benjamin being the first one for the next one wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. But it's still like, we're dealing with a company that tries to portray realism, even though we know that it's scripted. And when you have more control over realism, there's less of an excuse. There's weirder things that happen in reality that are more fun and more logical than the way that WWE books a lot of it. The tag team division, for instance, right now, up until this morning, we had 3 tag teams on Raw. It was the OC, the Street Profits, and the Viking Raiders. The only difference today, we have Hawkins and Ryder as well. So right now we have 3 babyface tag teams and a heel tag team that has lost to the babyface tag team champions about 8 times in the past 2 months. What do you do with this tag team division?
Well, you immediately draft in AOP. That shouldn't be without any question of doubt that AOP needs to be on Raw.
And they're going to be, because I don't think they ever aired a single promo on SmackDown.
They did.
Well, then fuck me then, Tony.
But they'll have to be on Raw.
They have to be.
I would say you'd have to put the Usos on there as well, but Naomi could really be of help to the SmackDown women's division, and so you have to make a decision of whether you sacrifice the tag team division on, like, what do they care about least, the women's division or the tag team division?
I think
the tag team division. So
no, because in this case, it's the Usos are more valuable than Naomi, so where they're needed is going to be the priority.
It strikes me more that it wouldn't shock me if AOP, the Ascension, and the Usos all go to Raw.
The Ascension goes to NXT.
Well, I don't even know if they've been wrestling on house shows. They might be in the same kind of position as the Colognes. They might just not really even exist. And if they do bother to announce anything with the Colognes, they'll put them on SmackDown.
Yeah, well, they could just decide on which ones they want to do, because they could just throw the Ascension on there as a tag team. They could throw the clones on there, but this doesn't really matter too much in the grand scheme of things. Whichever one gets the Usos, the other one is probably going to get the Hardys when they're back to try and balance things out a little bit.
And I think that that's going to be SmackDown.
Is there anything positive that we can discuss?
Well, SmackDown have a bigger tag team division, I guess.
They've got New Day, B-Team, Revival, Ziggler and Rude, Lucha House Party, and Heavy Machinery. So we could see... We've already seen Revival against New Day. We've seen... I mean, the B-Team's not going to make that much of a difference. Ziggler and Rude, they're not even going to be a tag team, probably.
They were drafted as one.
Yeah, which makes less sense than Bliss and Cross.
Fucking... DeVille and Mandy, they bothered to separate them, and they were supplemental picks on the same brand, and they bothered to put them down as separate names. But you drafted Hawkins and Ryder, Ziggler and Rude, and I guess you redrafted Bliss and Cross as a unit, but not Fire and Desire.
They also drafted Sami Zayn and Shinsuke Nakamura as one pick.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, that could be a tag team as well.
Yeah, they could be a tag team, so like that's not bad. Like they can get around that a little bit, and they could always do something like Chad Gable and Apollo Crews tag up, or Ali and Apollo Crews, or
Apollo Crews and
yeah, I mean
Cesaro.
Apollo Crews is one of those guys. Yeah. Like they could do that.
Drew Gulak and Cesaro would be a good tag team.
They can't. They're on separate shows.
No, they're not.
They're both on SmackDown.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. I don't have Drew Gulak written down for some reason.
He got drafted on TV.
No, he didn't.
Or no, he didn't. He got drafted on Sunday night.
Yeah, the supplemental draft, yeah.
Ah, I'm missing him on there. Well, that's another good positive for SmackDown then. He makes sense on SmackDown. He's like a sports kind of guy for the most part. Well, University City Stretcher.
The sports element doesn't really come into it because, like, the sports element for the SmackDown side of things is, they have Brock Lesnar, who's the UFC guy, who's feuding with Cain Velasquez right now, who's a UFC guy, and they want to get Ronda Rousey, who's the UFC girl, and that's about it, really. Because, like, maybe you can put Shinsuke Nakamura into that same scope, maybe Daniel Bryan, but Daniel Bryan's turned into more of a character in recent years. I mean, oh well, we're the sports wrestling show. Let's draft the Lucha House Party. We better get hold of Heath Slater as well. It's like Elias and all this other stuff. They're just a wrestling show like any other thing. There's not enough, I guess, legitimate athletes in WWE, if you want to class it that way, to really like balance it out or to present them in one side. Well,
but if you look on SmackDown right now, they could get away with trying to position Apollo Crews as that type, and they can do Lesnar, Gable, Bryan, Ziggler, maybe Nakamura, Cesaro, Drew Gulak.
All I'm saying is, if that was seen as like their vendetta, not so much vendetta, but their purpose of going into it was, we want to make this very sports orientated, then why is Bobby Lashley on Raw?
Yeah, that's another one that doesn't make any sense.
Why is Aleister Black on Raw? I mean, we know the reason why Aleister Black's on Raw, but by that logic, that doesn't make sense. Why are the Kabuki Warriors on Raw? The ones that have some sort. Why is Samoa Joe on Raw? People that have some sort of like could really fit into that kind of category have moved over onto the other side. So basically, maybe SmackDown has a slightly bigger number of those people, but they both have those types of people, and they both have types of people that are just entertainers. So they're just two brands with mixed people.
Some of the other things I'm noticing right now that I'm looking at this, they split up EC3 and Drake Maverick. I'm not sure that they don't give a shit, but
no,
that's a shame. At least that would have been like a potential tag team or something. Then again, of course, with everything that we're mentioning here, they could change their mind at literally any moment. We could just see EC3 pop up on SmackDown and they'll be like, he was traded.
Yeah, especially if the ratings start to go.
Yeah.
Not that they would, not that EC3 moving over from one side to the other is going to make too much of a difference, but they'll pick up on certain things, I imagine, in the next couple of months. And I would imagine that, like, regardless of anything, no matter what benefits or like good or bad things happening in draft, that there's going to be another superstar shakeup post WrestleMania.
I would assume so, yeah.
Because they have to do it at that point, because they would have already burnt a lot of these feuds into the ground by that point.
Are there any feuds that you guys are looking at that you're looking forward to? Whether it's the tag team, we mostly talked about the women, but like on the Raw men's side, for instance, like Kevin Owens. To me, I'm looking at that and I'm like, all right, Kevin Owens versus Samoa Joe, that could be kind of fun. Kevin Owens versus Randy Orton, I'm up for that.
I mean, there's some stuff that's good. I mean, I'm interested in seeing Aleister Black against a lot of people because he just hasn't been utilized, and that's probably the big benefit to the fact that he hasn't been utilized is that I just want to see him wrestle now and on a reasonably consistent basis. So him feuding with the likes of Samoa Joe would be great because I think they could mesh quite well. I think him and Randy Orton in some sort of like the veteran role, Drew McIntyre against Aleister Black for like maybe like a top contenders match and things along those lines would be good.
Styles.
Yeah, Styles would be great. I mean, yeah, Black's is a great wrestler and there'll be a lot of opportunity for him to do some stuff there. Buddy Murphy against AJ Styles. I think Buddy Murphy could put himself into a decent United States title picture because apparently Paul Heyman is very high on him. So, again, see more of him and see what he can really do. With the work that he's done over the last 3 months, I'd like them to at least consider utilizing Eric Rowan in some capacity because he's actually shown a lot more than I think many people gave him credit for in the last few months. He's not exactly going to be pulling up trees in the ring, but he should because that'd be cool. But but he's a very good talker now. He seems to be a lot stronger than he used to be, and he has a presence about him. So I think I wouldn't be too against him fighting for like in the upper mid card or just in the mid card role.
Buddy Murphy is one guy that really excites me because Paul Heyman took Edge, Rey Mysterio, Chris Benoit, and Eddie Guerrero from these like mid-card at best dudes to full-blown main event guys. And I think Buddy Murphy is of that same ilk. Outside of that, I'm excited to see what they choose to do with Kevin Owens. I'm excited to see Randy utilized as the established veteran because he's the only one left in a lot of ways. And I can't really say like there's matches that are like screaming out to me, oh, I can't wait to see like Seth fight Randy. Yeah, it'll be good because they're always good, but we've seen it plenty of times. You know, Seth fight Kevin Owens. We've seen it. Like Callum said, I'm excited to see Aleister Black wrestle because he just hasn't. You know, I'm excited to see what they do with the AOP. The Viking Raiders are now the tag team champions. Will that mean anything? I'm excited to see if anything will mean anything by the time we get to January. I'm not necessarily excited for a particular matchup, if that makes sense.
I'd probably clarify my position in saying that I'm not excited about anything. I'm intrigued by the potential of some of the stuff, but they're in an uphill battle with me to try and make me excited about anything at this point.
On the SmackDown side of things, I'm excited to see how often Brock Lesnar appears because they want him, right? He's the sports guy, so we've been told. You know, I'm excited to see what they do with the Fiend. I don't know why the Fiend was moved from Raw. My guess is Bruce Pritchard because the Firefly Funhouse screams like Bruce Pritchard shit, especially that Vince McMahon puppet impersonator.
It'd be great if he voiced it.
I think he does. No, that's what I'm saying. I think Bruce Pritchard
I imagine
has a lot to do.
I imagine they took it out of his own personal collection.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
if we ever hear the puppet say something about striations, then we know that's the case. I'm just goddamn hell.
Yeah, chat me up, pal. You know, it's just I don't know. Especially after this discussion, I think I'm even less enthused than I was coming into it, because
Well, that's what we're here for.
So many of the fallacies have just been pointed out so well that it's like, well, fuck, you know.
When I look at the SmackDown side, the first match that screams out to me is Daniel Bryan against Shinsuke Nakamura.
You think they're finally gonna go there?
They need to do it. Well, what other matches haven't they done before that they can really cling on to? Them feuding over the Intercontinental. Daniel Bryan is not going to feud for the WWE Championship for a while because Brock Lesnar's got a stranglehold over it, at least for the time being. And whoever will be feuding with him, which will likely be a mixture of the people we've seen before, like Roman Reigns, Braun Strowman, and maybe Kofi Kingston gets his rematch, that type of thing. So Daniel Bryan needs to be doing something pretty prominent in the meantime. Fighting for the Intercontinental Championship seems like a way of doing it, and I hope they don't just revert back to, The Miz still needs to win that Intercontinental title again, because they could, do the right thing and turn Miz heel and have him feud with Daniel Bryan once Daniel Bryan is the champion, because that seems like a more logical and satisfying way of doing things.
Well,
but
I want to ask about tiers. And kind of, because it's easier with the SmackDown side of things for us to kind of try to figure that out. Like, I would think more so your main event tier: Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman, and then you start bringing in like the upper mid cards that can basically be main eventers, but they can go down a little bit here and there depending on the situation, which would be Daniel Bryan, King Corbin, The Miz. And I think that might be it.
I put Nakamura in there, and obviously you should put Kingston in there as well.
I'm not thinking that Kingston's doing anything. I think that they're just New Daying them up.
Oh yeah, we haven't even touched on that. What kind of fucking guy? And I don't care if it's breast cancer month. I don't care. What kind of guy gets punked out completely embarrassed? Fuck what we know behind the scenes. Let's talk just character. You got bitched by Brock Lesnar, and you're gonna come out the next week and throw pancakes from your crotch?
Yeah, because they just don't care.
What the fuck is that?
Yeah. I mean, admittedly they have relegated him, but it's something that they know they can at least turn to if they decide to get the itch again to do it, because he's a former WWE champion, and so they can elevate him into that position if they ever wish to. I mean, Big E should really be elevated into that position at some point as well, realistically. But I mean, there's if they ever decide to do anything with Cesaro, then
Cesaro,
there's always that option. I
feel, is in that mid-card spot. I mean, they're already booking him to lose to Mansoor at Crown Jewel.
Well, yeah, of course he's going to lose to it.
So
that's why
Cesaro's kind of like he and Nakamura and Sami Zayn and The Miz to a certain extent, and Daniel Bryan to a certain extent, Elias, Gable, Ali, Apollo Crews. Those are going to be the mid-carders, I feel. And they're going to be like the bulk of a lot of the wrestling that we see.
So often when defending wrestling against something like MMA, I'm like, yeah, it's scripted, but at least, you'll get X amount of hours of fun and excitement and stuff like that. At this point, I almost regret not covering something like MMA, because at least when something shocking happens, you're not like, well, creative woke up on this side of the bed today. Fuck. You want to get angry, but then, as Callum has pointed out several times during this podcast,
what's the point?
What's the point? Because then why are you watching? Then why are you subjugating yourself to covering this?
I think it's fine to get angry at this sort of thing, but then you have to just let it go eventually, because we all know that it's not going to change until some guy kicks the bucket.
Yeah, Mark Carano.
Yeah, piece of shit.
I don't know why I went with his name.
Well, Bischoff's out the door now, so everything's going to change up at this point. He was
so much.
Yeah, we know he was the puppet master all this time. That's why it feels so much like WCW. But But yeah, it's hard to get super infused about this because we have seen so many of these matches before. Even if it happened like a couple of years ago. I mean, you were talking about I think you mentioned something along the lines of we can have, I don't know, this match between Seth Rollins and Randy Orton, like we've seen that, but that happened like 2-3 years ago. That's quite a long time in WWE terms of things, and yet people still remember it because it turns out the people that were watching back then are the exact same people that are watching now, only there's less of us, and there hasn't been really that much more added to it. So it doesn't really matter how much longer it is because these people burn out so much quicker than they did during the Attitude Era, because in the Attitude Era people's runs were like 2-3 years, or like in earlier stints it was 2 or 3 years and then you're done and then you move to another promotion and then you come back some other time, maybe in a different gimmick, and you start all over again. Now you're on screen for 10-15 years and you're still expecting us to get excited to see these guys appear.
And in the Attitude Era, fucking people lost matches and got pissed about it. I mean, yeah, Mankind pulled a sock out of his crotch, but at least he stuffed it down the throat of whoever the top heel was. He wasn't just like, hey, I lost in 8 seconds. Let me not even talk about it anymore.
No, don't disparage Mr. Saka. I mean, he's better than half the people on this roster.
I want to ask this because I think this might be. I mean, we can't obviously know this or anything like that, but what would you guys assume? Because we've talked about how Fox wanted these people and USA wanted these people, and maybe Heyman wanted this person and all this other stuff, and Vince was moving stuff around or whatever. How many of these wrestlers do you think wanted to be on, like, had a strong conviction of being on either show?
I feel like there's a couple names that really specifically wanted to be somewhere, but I feel like they don't necessarily want to go on a particular brand. They more so wanted to stay with particular other people.
Yeah,
obviously, like Charlotte and Andrade and Aleister Black and Zelina, like that was a package deal. But even like the idea that like Bayley and Sasha stayed together, they are best friends, and Sasha has said for the longest time that she wants to be on SmackDown, and I feel like that's kind of like a fangirl moment. She just wanted to be a part of the brand that Eddie Guerrero was the big part of. So maybe they specifically wanted to move her there because she was like, part of the negotiation process, just sitting there going like, I want to go to SmackDown. And then maybe that was a little bit of the portion of that. But I can't imagine like Heath Slater, for instance, being like, I really want to go to SmackDown. He probably is just sort of like, whatever, I'm being in the exact same position either show.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of Sasha wanting that fangirl moment, but I have to wonder if Sasha, knowing what she knows, if Sasha wanted to work with Heyman and stay on Raw and do that kind of stuff, because Heyman got Eddie there.
Well, I'm pretty sure she wouldn't have said, I want to go to the brand that Alexa's on.
Well, I think
that's one thing.
And also she might not want to stay on the brand that she returned to and completely lost all her steam in the course of 2 months. So maybe she would have welcomed the fresh change. But it's just the idea that I'm positing is that I don't think, pretty much, besides obviously wanting to stay with certain people because they're friends with them or they team with them or anything along those lines, that they really care which brand they end up with, because they're going to be probably in the similar position that they ended up with anyway. And they all kind of see it as just, they all work for WWE. They don't work for Raw. They won't work for SmackDown. And that's the thing about it, is that they want to create quote unquote competition, which is this word which keeps getting thrown around, which is losing meaning at every single time I hear it. Because, like, if you want to create competition, first of all, shouldn't advertise the other show on each brand, because why would you promote your opponent's show if you're doing that type of thing? Secondly, you should try and badmouth the other show, which they did in the first couple of years of the original draft, where Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler on commentary would say, oh, you're not going to see this type of stuff on SmackDown, and vice versa with Taz and Michael Cole. You need to create some sort of, like, dichotomy, saying like Brock Lesnar is the real world champion because Seth Rollins, because he's the WWE champion on SmackDown. You need to start actually acting like both brands care about being number one, which hasn't really felt that way the entire time. Like, maybe they tried it for the first couple of months when they first did the brand split in 2016, but ever since then it's just been, okay, these are just two sides of WWE. They both mean the exact same thing, they both care the exact same amount, and the only time they actually care about representing their brand is when Survivor Series rolls around, because they have to, because that's what the gimmick of Survivor Series is.
See, I thought, like, in this new iteration of the draft, or the brand split, that 2016 run from when the draft happened up till WrestleMania, I thought was pretty damn good. And then after that, it started to just fall apart completely.
I have 3 more questions I want to ask you guys. Before we get into that, let me throw out some plugs here. If you want us to talk more about different things with the draft, or maybe you want us to do something like that all-time draft that we had mentioned before, consider hitting up the Patreon. Whether you donate $1 or $5 or anything that you got on your spare change that you want to toss our way, that's all factored in there. But in particular, the Pick Your Poison tier is the one that you can request different special features, and that's something to be aware of. You can do that same thing for fanboysanonymous.com, which is my site for the movie reviews and stuff like that. So go check out fanboysanonymous.com, go subscribe to that YouTube channel, and do those different types of things that you would be doing for Smark Out Moment over there. And for both of those different channels and websites and everything else that goes along with both Smark Out Moment and Fanboys, check out the merchandise shops. There's TeePublic and there's Redbubble. And there's also a Mango Tees for both of those, so there's 6 different shops where you can pick up some merchandise if you're interested in that. I want to ask you guys 3 different questions here. These are going to be my final 3 questions. You mentioned Survivor Series. They still have not clarified 100% if it's going to be Raw versus SmackDown, but we have to kind of assume that it probably will be because they've done that for the past 3 years. If that's the case, right now, we're looking at Shinsuke Nakamura versus AJ Styles for the mid-card title situation.
Okay.
Who drops a belt, or do they keep that?
I think they keep it.
I think if anyone drops the belt, it will be Shinsuke. And if he drops the belt, it will be to Brian.
I'm thinking that he's going to drop it to The Miz. And they're going to do that whole thing again.
Why?
Because The Miz gets closer to beating, he matches Jericho's record, and
I understand the reasoning behind it, but like
why do you want to see Miz versus AJ Styles? Like, I'll go with Callum's idea. Callum, I hope you're right. Like,
not that they would necessarily do that, but I feel like Daniel Bryan's going to lean more towards the Brock Lesnar side of things for a little bit.
And also, they did several AJ Styles Daniel Bryan matches earlier this year, and they were underwhelming, as most of AJ Styles' feuds actually are.
And we've got, for the tag team division, we've got the Viking Raiders against the Revival. I think that that's staying.
Yeah, that would make sense. The only thing they'd change is the Revival will be the only one that would potentially drop those belts. Sure. Don't know who to, but that seems like the most logical one to do.
We got Becky versus Bayley. I think that's staying.
That is.
Yeah.
Becky wins.
Yeah, Becky wins that for sure. And then we would have the women's tag team titles, which we don't know what that situation is, but they could get around that by saying the Raw side of things, the Kabuki Warriors, are going to fight a SmackDown team, so that way they can do like, well, it's Raw versus SmackDown technically, and then that would be Bliss and Cross. I
imagine they'd just be in the Raw Survivor Series women's team.
Yeah.
It could be. But they wouldn't necessarily have to be. They could do Charlotte as the team captain of that.
Okay.
And have, like, Liv Morgan and Natalya and the Iconics.
Wow.
Wow.
That really got me excited for that.
Oh, well, none of this is really exciting. That's the thing. And on SmackDown side, for that matter, they could do, like, Sasha and Fire and Desire and Carmella and Lacey.
Yep.
Like, that rules everybody out for that. And in that case, who cares who wins between that? That they're going to make that decision based off of who they want to be the final person, and that's it. On the Raw side of things for the men, they could do Well, but they could do the tag team thing too if they really wanted to. They could do like Street Profits and OC and whatever like that. I don't know how they're going to play that
It'll
out.
be on the pre-show and it won't count.
Yeah, but they got plenty of different people that could be a part of Team Raw for the men's side. Like they could do AJ Styles if he's not the champion. They could do Aleister Black. They could do Andrade. They could probably put Buddy Murphy in there. Maybe Bobby Lashley, but I don't know about him and Rusev. They wouldn't be on the same team. It shouldn't make any sense at the very least. They could do Drew McIntyre. He's injured. Cedric Alexander's in the mix. That's all over the place. But I would assume the bigger names like the Kevin Owens and Randy Orton and Rey Mysterio, that those are the ones that they're going to really focus on. So it's hard to tell what that is. We're not even going to bother with that one. But if we go with the world champions, that would be either Seth Rollins versus Brock Lesnar. Really don't want to see that again. Or if the titles change hands, Cain Velasquez against Bray Wyatt. What the hell?
I mean, it's this situation with the World Championships which makes me firmly believe they're not doing Raw versus SmackDown as well.
Yeah, actually. As soon as those words came out of your mouth, Tony, I said, well, maybe this year they just don't do it.
Well, here are the different scenarios you can get. You can get... You've spoken about if the two titles change hands, but if only one title change hands for some bizarre reason, then it's either Brock Lesnar versus Bray Wyatt or Seth Rollins versus Cain Velasquez.
Well, then you can get
and
away with
all those four matchups don't make any sense.
But you can get away with Lesnar and Wyatt because they have history and they're doing the whole...
But they won't let Lesnar lose that match.
Well, but we've already seen with The Fiend that they will do whatever they need to get around it.
Well, plus they also would have to move Wyatt to Raw then. And then Fox would lose out on Wyatt.
Right.
I just get the sense that whatever match that they would choose for that thing, if they do end up doing the Raw vs SmackDown, whatever one of those four matches, it won't have a finish.
Probably not. And then they're backtracking to the whole, like, pissing people off type thing, which is you can't do the same thing and never learn a lesson. What the hell? Yeah.
The only match that would have a finish would be Seth Rollins against Brock Lesnar, and they just have Brock Lesnar go over because Rollins has already beaten him twice this year, so it doesn't matter anyway.
Right.
I hate this.
Yeah, it's making it seem like it's a real fucking pain in the ass situation.
No, the way this podcast went, we're well on our way to 2 weeks from now doing part 2, WWE Sucks Crown Jewel rant.
Oh, yeah. Well, did you expect anything different?
But
we call it Electric Boogaloo.
Can we please?
I'm very much looking into Crown Jewel as this has a lot of potential to get people interested, and boy, are they going to be disappointed. I'm not looking forward to Crown Jewel.
I'm going to Crown. Well, I know we're going to talk about it in detail later, but I'm actually thinking both titles change hands.
Yeah, we'll see. Another question I have for you guys, one of the last ones here. If you were to get drafted based off of these rosters, now assuming you're in the singles division, obviously for the men's side of things, which brand would you rather go to?
In terms of actual people to work with.
Also keep in mind, you got an extra hour on Raw, so you might get more TV time, but on SmackDown, you're a big fish in a small pond.
Well, I think Raw has the better collection of people to have matches with. The more, like, athletic, younger stars in general. I'd probably go to SmackDown because that's where my personal allegiances have always lain. And well, it's got Daniel Bryan on it, and I'd go because if I was to ever wrestle, the only person I probably ever would like desperately want to wrestle is Daniel Bryan. So,
and for me, see, in America on Fox, you get seen by more people. That's just a given. But I'm gonna have to go with on Raw. You work under Heyman, and you can learn from that tree. And if you don't get used on 3 hours of Raw, you'll at least get used on main event. So I'm going Raw.
That's kind of my philosophy as well. Plus, you are not on the brand with Brock Lesnar, so there's more of a chance that you can actually win the championship because the championship might be around. So that's something to keep in mind.
Like you'd ever win the championship.
Like I'd ever win a match.
Tony would totally be the 24/7 champion.
I
He's
could
the
do.
best one. He doesn't sleep.
That's a good point. Somebody's like, God damn it, this motherfucker is just always awake. Why can't we get around this? Last question. I think this is the one that we should round this out on. Keeping in mind the tag team divisions, the Raw division, the women's divisions, the singles divisions on the men's side, the free agents that could swap in at any moment and completely change the game with like the balancing act. Gun to your head, who came out better on this draft, Raw or SmackDown?
Raw.
Can I say they both lost?
Well, they did, but which one was the better loser?
Raw, because they have more people.
Yep.
I gotta go Raw as well. Better stars for the women's division. Ultimately, a bigger amount of people to choose from for the men's division. And even though the tag team division's in a bad situation right now, they could easily bring in the Usos and AOP, and it changes everything.
And Raw has Becky, Charlotte, Seth, which of the maybe 5 people they build the regular television around, those are 3 of them.
Yep. So, that's the 2019 draft review. We have no idea how this is going to play out over the next couple of months. They could change everything up with another wild card rule type of situation. They can ignore things and just have people go between the brands because, well, crossover, who gives a shit? Anything can happen. And hopefully, if anything can happen, some good things can happen too, because we're not really all that positive about this the way that it is right now. And I guess we'll just see if by the time WrestleMania comes around, if we're right about our whole predictions as far as like, well, are they just going to do Becky Charlotte again? Are they just going to bring Ronda Rousey in and do this? And how are they going to play all that kind of stuff out? We're going to see. I already did all my plugs, but these fine gentlemen here have other things that they want to promote as well. Callum?
So 2019 sucks. Why not go back to the year 2001 and
Which also
check out?
hold on.
Well, which we can find out where all the origins of this suckage of WWE came from. Which the year that WCW died, ECW died. We're talking about 2001 Wrestling Odyssey, our retro podcast.
Hey,
go back.
Eric Bischoff's out of work again. 2001.
But yeah, we just go back in time, review the all the shows that were taking place in that year. We're up to our October edition, which will be coming out later this month. But you can check out all the other episodes we've done so far from January stretching through to September, including a special on WrestleMania 17. That's all on that side of things. But also check out on the weekly articles on smarkatmoment.com, including the power rankings, because that's the one that I contribute. And you can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14.
Okay, for me, unfortunately I no longer contribute to one of the weeklies, and that's because I'm so busy elsewhere, such as WrestleZone.com, where I do the news Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I do live coverage for NXT. So if you're watching NXT, follow along. I'll be doing live coverage there, and then a post-show podcast where I will debate the better what show is better, NXT or AEW, following the shows at around 10:05 Eastern on the WrestleZone Facebook channel. I'm also contributing to Fightful, and Sean Rossap, great source for wrestling news. Subscribe to Fightful Select if you're not already subscribing to our Patreons. You should add that one because, boy, there's a ton of news on Eric Bischoff and just the silly, asinine culture of WWE. So check out Fightful Select. Follow me on Twitter at DudeFelice. I'm going to make a Patreon for my own sanity. You should donate to that. And yeah, go Sanity.
Oh, they have already broken up.
Fuck.
But if you want to check Killian Dane, you can find him on NXT. Alrighty, everybody.
Alexander Wolf, also NXT.
NXT UK, yeah. And I have already done all my talk, but obviously if you have not checked out the other stuff, head up all the social media accounts, check to subscribe on all the different platforms that are out there, like the things, rate the things, follow the things, do the things. The things are good, so check out all the things on fanboysanonymous.com and smarkoutmoment.com and drop your comments below and tell us what you thought about the 2019 draft, what you thought about our review, and what you'd like to see us do going forward. And the next time that you're going to be hearing from us is probably going to be the hot tags, but We also have the mailbag coming up next week, so send in those mailbag questions if you haven't done that already, and we'll see what else we got coming up, and you'll be aware of that when it happens. So stay tuned for that, everybody. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we're being counted out.